Alright, next up we're going to carve the top here with the power carver. And I bought this power carver at Harbor Freight, and I picked up these sanding pads off of Amazon. I got a 36 grit and a 60 grit, and I wanted to test it out on a piece of wood just to see how it felt before I took it to my top. So the first time I take it to the top here, what I do is I start at the top and bring it down just to get the feel for it. And I've got a huge squirrel cage fan behind me blowing out all of the dust. And then this is my custom downdraft sander. So I've got all this sawdust floating out into the street. And this is just me going back and forth, going slow. And since I've got the depth with the drill press, I know exactly where to stop. So we'll just go back and forth here. And this took me about 20 minutes. I fast forward here and I turn the top a bunch of different times to figure out how to actually do this correctly. And it is really aggressive. So I want to be really careful as I'm doing this. The next morning we came back out here and started at it again. And there is a finesse to doing this correctly. After that first, I'd say 10 minutes of doing this, it's just a back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And as you're doing it, you're just sanding away the material and you just keep going. Want to be really careful of the edge, and that's why I've got that piece I routed in the beginning, because now I know exactly where to stop. And even if I get a little nick here or there, I still got a lot of material to work with. So we'll just keep going. I'm going to be really careful of the upper horn, and I'll do most of that later, but just a lot of back and forth to get it to where it is here. So after taking this to the carver, I still have a pretty fine edge here, and I've got a little plane, and I'm not 100% comfortable taking this to the edge with the carver. But what's nice about this little handy plane is that it cleans it up nicely. All I had to do was sharpen up the blade, and it gets that edge nice and perfect before I take the sander to it. So what we'll do is we'll take this plane and we'll go over all the spots that are still really high, just be a little bit safer with this beautiful top. There's different size planes that I bought. The big one. This obviously takes a ton more material out. Don't like using this unless I'm starting out, but you can make some pretty fine adjustments with this. I could still see taking some pretty huge chunks, which is not what I want to do. Like I said, I'd rather take more strokes than less material. You want to make sure you're going with the grain so you don't chunk out stuff too much. You could just see, as you go slowly, how much material you can slowly take off. I've also had a lot of good luck with these little planes. you can get these really sharp. You can really take these lines out. The one that's actually set up the best right now is this one. And you just go back and forth in this motion. You can get a lot of material off really quick. You can see how helpful that line is. You just go up to the line and stop. And you can also see then where the divots are that I still need to get out. And when you keep these tools sharp, they work outstanding. So as I'm going against the grain here, it gets a little bit aggressive and chunks out. And then going in the end grain, it's pretty forgiving as well. As I was using the power carver, I started to get really nervous as I got to the end here. And I could have kept going with it, but the planes are a lot more exact in terms of taking off where I want to take off. You can see I got a little bit of a bump here. The planes just take it off nice and quick. This is a lot of back and forth again, but this is also why I like woodworking. Very calming. You can see all the gouges just disappear going back and forth. And once you've got a good edge, you just keep going. So I wasn't getting this bottom edge right, and even with all the planes I have, I wanted to really get that end grain down a little bit further. So I came back with the power carver and just went over it one more time. There were still some holes that I had here and there and wanted to clean that up. So I'll move back to the planes here. And again, once I had this set up right, this moved pretty quick. I think all in all, I only maybe did an hour in total with the planes. Any low spots, this really cleans it up nicely. So in doing the top part, I've intentionally waited to the end to sort of see how the rest of the top turned out. I need to get sort of this part sanded at 3.5 degrees, and I'll do that on my drum sander. I'll build a little jig and push that through, and that way I'll get a nice flat level top. I wanted to see how this turned out, and I didn't want to take the power carver to it. I wanted to just sort of play around with the wood. This is probably the most delicate piece that I'll be working on. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and begin using the chisel again. I carved a little of this out. I was uncomfortable with that. And this is really where you want to avoid some of the blowouts, this chipped out. But at least I want to get it a little bit deeper. So once I chiseled out a little bit more, this is a Dragon Rasp from Stu Mac. It's got a nice curve on it, and I can just come in here. Really begin to smooth this out. So I've got the horn pretty close to where I want it so I can take it to the sander. I got enough material down here now. What I'm going to do is I've got a backing board, and I'm essentially going to build up the top so that it's at 3.5 degrees. I could sand it with a plane or a stick and some sandpaper, but since I've got the drum sander, this is one of the advantages of having some of these tools, is I'm going to build a little fence and take this upstairs to the drum sander and just do this automatically. Gibson's got some really neat tools to sand their tops, and I've done some hacks here to get this to 3.5 degrees. So I'm going to take this board, slide it under, and I'm pretty close to 3.5. And so I'm going to do is screw a front board here to sort of brace the guitar in this jig. So I've got that piece of African mahogany that I cut out earlier. We're going to nail it down with a little bit of a shim so it doesn't move. And then we're going to see how exact we are to 3.5. So at 3.3, and I've got that piece of wood on the bottom with the 2.5 degree shims. So all I do is just sort of slide that shim back a little bit. Here's the shim underneath the 2.5 degree pieces of wood. And I think I've got it set. So we'll take this up to the drum sander. I think I put it through maybe about 10 times. That way I can finish routing for the pickups and the neck pocket, and then have everything sort of sit flat at that 3.5 degree angle. So that was the 10th time. You can see it's nice and flat. And we'll come back and clean up that hard edge now. So I've got a Dragon Rasp, some planes, make sure it's set right, and then just go at it. And so we'll just bring that carve down slightly. Still got to clean up the top edge by the neck pocket over there. You can see how much material I can pull off with that plane. This really doesn't take all that long. And actually watching this as it's fast forwarded is pretty cool. You can see how much material I can move and how quickly I can do it. So we'll continue to work that edge. I've got a rounded file, which this actually got me the best results. I'll just clean this up. I thought about dropping this carve down into the horn, but then I lose the binding, and since I'm doing black binding here, I didn't want to do that. So I do have a burr that I could put in my drill press and my drill and just clean up a couple spots. I've got one nick that really pissed me off here. One dig out, chip out, whatever that I needed to clean up. But a little bit more elbow grease and I got it. Clean up the top horn. So then we'll move to sanding the top with some 80 grit. I've got a variable speed Craftsman sander here. And then a soft sponge backing pad, which allows me to do the contours of the top without digging in. And I've got this set on the lowest setting, so speed 1, the least aggressive. And I'm just going to go back and start sanding out all the different curves and nicks, scratches from the chiseling and the planing. I think I've probably got about 15 minutes of doing this. And this is on my custom downdraft table again. I've got the squirrel cage fan behind me blowing all the dust out and taking it out. And then I've got my LED panel above me so I can see this really good. We'll speed this up and just sand out as much as we can. Flip this around, make sure I can see everything I'm doing. We'll come back with a pencil and turn the body a couple of times and make sure that I've got everything. What's key in doing this work is that you walk away from the guitar body and come back in a little bit. Your eyes sort of go blind to any of the chip outs, any of the scratches, and using the pencil and taking a break allows you to really see what's going on, and turning the body in the light allows you to see everything. So what happens is the pencil goes in to the center of the scratch or hole or divot or whatever, and you get the sanding paper and the pad and everything, you just go over it again and get it all cleaned up. And then for the upper horn, what I do is take a sanding pad with the same 80 grit and do the same thing up there as well. So all in, maybe about 20 minutes to sand down the top. This is with 80 grit. I'll come back to 300 at another time. I'm not going to film that, but that's right before I stain. I've still got now some work to do with doing the binding and finishing up the routing on the top. And you'll see that all in the next video. So thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next vid.